Thank you for joining me today for Real Estate, Religion, and You. My name is Dr. Sylvia Black, licensed real estate broker with Affordable Homes and Apartments, and I'm licensed to preach and ordained as a minister. And I have my master's degree in sacred theological divinity. And I'd like to thank you for joining me today for Real Estate, Religion, and You. Hello. Today we are out at Niagara Falls, at Niagara Falls High School. Today is the official day of Martin Luther King's birthday, and we are going to actually film four surviving freedom riders who rode the buses to end segregation and eliminate those signs that were on there, the segregated signs. So now we go inside the auditorium.
So how you keep my true recording?
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the fair moonless sky, for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in the air, came through the night, that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free, and the home of the brave, home of the
Is that recording? There's that boy there, right?
Freedom reign, happy birthday. Let freedom reign, happy birthday to freedom, young people. Hate, fighting, war, murdering, corruption, police killing. What's really going on? How can happy really come? Look what Dr. King said if he were alive today. Yes, guys, it's really bad in the time, but there still is hope. Guys, every day we're facing the rising sun. Yes, Michael, but it is hard, but we have hope. You're right, Janaya. We have hope!
Before we hear one more, you may.
A change has got to come. When I really do not have the answer to. But one thing I do believe, if Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were here, I believe that he would just shake his head. People, we're in a real bona fide, sure enough struggle. But just like Micah said, hope is alive, and it remains alive, as long as we have breath to breathe. So keep on trusting, keep on believing, keep on moving and walking by faith, because it ain't over. It ain't over.
to be here this evening. I'm excited about the panelists who will be talking to you about their experiences. It appeared in May of 1954 that a new American Revolution would be launched after the Supreme Court struck down the 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson decision that legalized segregation, a revolution that would grant African Americans full citizenship rights. But that would only occur after a protracted struggle. Young people played a critical role in this movement towards freedom with their boycotts and their sit-ins. The Freedom Rides began in 1961. Nearly 75% of the riders were between the ages of 18 and 30 years old. More than half of them were black, a quarter were women. Most of the riders were college students. Many had various religious affiliations. Some were active in civil rights groups like the Congress of Racial Equality, or CORE, which actually initiated the Freedom Rides and was founded in 1942 on Gandhi's principle of nonviolent protest. The goal of the riders, CORE Director James Farmer said as he launched the campaign, was to create a crisis so that the federal government would be compelled to enforce the laws. As you will see this evening, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the NAACP, and other groups were also key players. We are privileged to have panelists tonight who were participants in this movement for social justice, and they are here to share their experiences. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Fred Harrison. Mr. Harrison was born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. His early movement experiences occurred in Hattiesburg and in neighboring New Orleans, Louisiana. After graduating from Carl Rowan High School, he was recruited to work in the U.S. Southern Civil Rights Movement under the tutelage of the legendary Robert Moses of SNCC. He was an organizer, primarily in the 2nd Congressional District of Mississippi, which includes most of Jackson, the capital, Vicksburg, Greenville, Clarksdale, and Clinton. He also worked in Lowndes County, Alabama, and Southwest Georgia. Anderson studied Hegelian philosophy and theories of nonviolence, passive resistance at Tougaloo. A passionate writer, he received the Richard Wright Literary Prize for Excellence in Southern Expressions from Jackson State College. Mr. Anderson enlisted in the U.S. Armed Forces and service in Vietnam, but he went underground in Harlem, New York, and worked as a youth development officer under the auspices of Haru Act. The late great American author James Baldwin and historian John Henry Clark befriended him. This duo played or sponsored his membership in the Harlem Writers Guild and encouraged him to write, and to write, and to write. Anderson went on into political exile in Canada, where he achieved a number of literary accomplishments. It's also my pleasure to introduce to you Ms. Barbara Bowie of Kirby, who became a Mississippi activist like her brother, Jesse James Davis, who also was a freedom rider. Bowie contends that the conferences and historical presentations on the freedom struggles of the 1960s was crucial to ensure that future generations know that they too can make a difference. And that's so important when you think about the ages. Barbara Bowie. Mr. Fred Anderson. And Mr. Hezekiah Watkins. have listed Mr. Jesse James Davis. He unfortunately is ill and is not able to make it. I ask his sister and his brothers here at the panel would like you to keep him in your thoughts. So we're going to get started. I know you don't want to hear me. I don't want to hear me. We have some wonderful people on our panel, and it's been a joy. I just want to make sure they know that it's been a joy spending time with you these last couple of days. There are some secrets that I won't tell just yet, but I might need to if I need something. But we're going to move on with these folk, and we're going to have some candid conversations. So we're not going to do easy words. There might be some hard things that you might hear from their personal experiences with the civil rights movement, because they are personal experiences. They're not stories or things that have been made up. They are personal experiences. My questions will be sprinkled with some questions that came from students. We have about 30 minutes, so we're going to just go ahead and get going. What was a major event that caused you to become actively involved in the civil rights movement, and maybe discuss just a little bit in detail some of the major events that, or maybe that there was just one. Anyone can start.
First of all, my involvement in the struggle became accidental. When the Freedom Riders was en route to Jackson, Mississippi, my mother, my minister, and others informed me that when these riders come, do not get involved. And my mom only had to say that once. So my involvement was zero at the time. But the Freedom Riders did come to Jackson, and I was nosy. I wanted to see what a Freedom Rider looked like. I wanted to see what a Freedom Rider talked like. Even the way the rider was dressing. So I chose to go to the meeting. And after the meeting, the presenter asked, is there anyone here who would like to get involved? There was a few. But once those riders, once those individuals made it to the Greyhound bus station, they changed their mind. And a friend of mine named Troy Harris, he and I was there, but we could not see what was doing. So Troy said, let's run across and get a better view. I said, that's a great idea. So in running across, if Troy was here tonight, he would tell you that he was pulling me backwards to prevent me from entering the Greyhound bus station. So since he's not here, I want to tell you what happened. Troy pushed me into the bus station. And that particular night, I became a Freedom Rider. After entering the bus station, I was asked two questions. Number one, your name. Number two, your place of birth. I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was only there for maybe 2 to 3 years before my mother moved to Mississippi. And once moved to Mississippi, that became my home, where I now live. And I was sent to Hartsville, which is a state prison, that same night. Not only was I in prison at the age of 13, I was on death row. And death row at the time didn't mean nothing to me, because I was not familiar with the word death row. Very naive, very country, not knowing why I was there, really became devastating to me at that particular time. And that's how I became a Freedom Rider.
I think Hezekiah probably the youngest of the Freedom Riders. I think you were 13. And I was 14. I think there are maybe 2, 3 major events that propelled me to join the Freedom Rides and the Civil Rights Movement. The first one being a cousin who was several years older than myself at the time, might have been 15, who was brutally murdered. The coffin were to be lynched when I was a young boy. And then there was another very famous occasion in my hometown of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. A gentleman by the name of Mac Charles Clark, and you can Google that, and you see quite a few of the history books. And he was brutally murdered and lynched, and his body was dumped in the Pearl River. And it just hung over the whole community, terror and the fear of what could happen to young boys and young girls. And it was a lesson that our parents always used in the story about being careful and fearful that this would happen to us. The other part of the story that was very motivating for me is that my grandmother was a master quilt maker. And in her front room, she had this huge, gigantic quilting frame. And almost every evening, all of these elderly black women would come over and sit around the frame in a sewing bee, and they would sew these quilts. And they were quite elderly, so they couldn't see how to thread the needles. So as a young boy, it was my job to sit there and make sure the needles were always threaded for them. But it was an opportunity to hear some amazing stories that they had to tell to each other about the community, people who were doing things in the community. And those stories of courage and resistance was something else that spurred me to become involved in the civil rights movement. And as I said to Hezekiah, my mother had died when I was 11, and frankly, if my mother had still been alive, there was no way I would have gotten involved. Because once I was kind of a mama's boy, and I just had too much respect for her, and I would defy her to do it. But she was dead, and when I decided to make the decision to go off and get on the bus, my dad had said to me, this is something that you seem determined to do. It doesn't seem that anything I can say is going to make any difference to you in not doing it. So go, be safe, and you're in my prayers. But as Hezekiah said, none of us knew that a simple, single act like that, within days, would end you up in prison for 22 days. And the brutality and the violence that we as freedom riders, other freedom riders, suffer for that small act of courage.
Well, I don't really claim the fame of being a freedom rider. During that time, my brother was very active in the freedom rides, and my mother was extremely angry, as were most of the mothers in the community and sisters and brothers of the freedom riders. My brother was 6 years older than me, so he was able to defy my mother and become a freedom rider. However, my mother became very protective of me, I guess thinking that I would do the same thing, because of course the freedom riders were women, men, young boys, black, white, and so she wanted to keep me under her wing. My mother, in Jackson, Mississippi, if you've seen the movie Help, that's pretty basically how it was there. My mother was a maid. She was a maid for Millsaps College. And evidently a good maid. One of the professors there asked her to clean his house as well. And she accepted that extra job. Well, she would have to go to his house from the college by bus the days that she did that. We walked everywhere. I don't know, these kids don't do that, but we walked everywhere. I was not accustomed to riding the city bus. There was another bus that used to take us to Jackson State College, and that bus we could sit anywhere. So one day my mother asked me to go with her to clean this professor's house. And so I'm standing out there with the maids and just waiting for the bus. So when it came, of course, they let me get on first. She has to put the money in. And when I got on the bus, I sat down. And the maids, all the others, my mom and the other maids got on. And of course, they proceeded all the way to the back. And my mother, you know, she called me Gal. Gal, come on back here. Come on, come on, come on. You know, they all were telling me to come on back because there were two whites in front of me. We were on the long seats. And I had sat down beside another white in that seat. And they were really afraid for me. I was not, because I wasn't really knowledgeable of what was going on, because we had accepted status quo. We, you know, weren't having any problems. We stayed in our place, they stayed in their place. That's the way it was. And I say gentleman in front of me immediately became extremely angry and started calling me names, worse names than the N-word, I might add. And he got up. When he got up, all the maids in the back started rolling their umbrellas. Because I think if he had, you know, tried to do something to me, they would have probably beat him, you know. But he got down on the step, you know, as you go out. And he continued verbally abusing me and calling me names that I just didn't even understand. And I think at that point, I felt like I was a part of this movement, because I'm thinking, why in the world would he treat me this way for just sitting on this bus? And that's exactly how I started thinking. I guess the way my brother was thinking, that we need to do something about this. And that's how I got involved. Thank you.
Now, Fred, I heard you mention that your cousin and a number of your relatives were lynched. Billie Holiday sang a song called Strange Fruit, which talks about in the South how it was not unusual to sometimes walk down a road as a black person and see relatives, black relatives and friends hanging from trees from being lynched. Therefore, she called it strange fruit. Negative experiences. What negative experiences did you face? I mean, for us as an audience to get an idea as to what the times were like, how was life back then, as it related to your experiences as a black person in a white world, in America.
Yeah. Well, at that time, in Hattiesburg and Mississippi, everything was totally separate. I mean, from birth to the grave, the races were totally separate. We attended black churches, we attended all black schools, we had our own stores, institutions, whether they were barbershops, or they were hairdressers, and very rarely did the two worlds meet. And often when they did meet, there was potential for danger and for explosions. I tell the story, I can remember, as all mothers do when you have young kids and have company somewhere, they always hold your hand. And I could vividly remember the difference, the way my mother would hold my hand when we were in our own community. But if we had to go downtown in the white community, it was an entirely different kind of grip that she had on my hand. And you could feel the tension and the fear and the concern for keeping you safe. And that's a powerful message that a racist, separated society wanted Black mothers to communicate to their kids. And there was no more powerful way to do it. And so everything was just totally separate. What I do want to add is that even though those all-Black schools that we attended were inferior schools, and they were inferior schools because the textbooks that we were using were the textbooks that had come down to us from the white schools the year before. Or the lab or the chemistry materials that we were using was the material that comes from us maybe 3 years ago from the white schools. I mean, so even though the resources and the material were different, we pay homage to those Black teachers who were our teachers because they cared about us and they pushed us and they wanted us to achieve and they prepared us despite those very difficult circumstances.
I might add that the community was very degrading as well. As my brother had talked about, they, for instance, in the parks, they would have water fountains, and one would say colored, and the other one would say white, or colored only, white only. The colored fountains would be this low, and the white fountains would be a little higher so that you could, comfortably drink the water. In my community, I lived on a main street, actually the street that the Greyhound bus was on. It was very long and, residential, and then it went all the way downtown. On one side of the street, it was white. All the way back that way, it was white, living whites. And from this side of the street was Blacks on that. And I'm living in a shotgun house, and my community was like that. But we're living across the street from mansions, I would call them mansions at that time. I mean, there may be bigger mansions now, but I'm just saying they have beautiful homes, and we used to love to go up the streets. We would have to pass those homes to go to the store or something, and they were beautiful. And I remember, one of the white ladies was out on the porch, and she had been watching me go back and forth a lot. And one day she stopped me and asked me to come up to her and asked me to, she wanted me to clean her house. And I accepted that, and I would go and just, she'd have these big tables with the big round legs, and I'd be under there shining them like a shoe shine ball, because that was the status quo. And we accepted that type of degrading. So, when someone rose up to help us get out of that kind of thing, I think that we all were on board with that, and we were willing to defy our parents to get out of this. Why are we being treated this way? But we didn't recognize it at first. It was just the way it was. And I'm glad that I got involved.
I'll give you one more example of just how personal and degrading practice of racism can become. When I was a little boy, and my mother would take me downtown shopping to purchase clothing for school, when you went into the store, your mother had to absolutely know what your sizes were, because Black people were not allowed to try the clothes on. Just under this myth and this racist concept that no white person would want to wear clothes that Black people would have tried on. And if they didn't know the size, and they got home and it didn't fit, there was no way you could return it.
the world, I think the world was made aware of the racism and the racial injustice in the United States, particularly in Europe. They were made aware of the work of the civil rights movement here in the U.S., in particular the freedom riders. Your work as a freedom rider alerted the rest of the world as to what was going on here in the U.S. What other pluses do you know, came about because of your involvement and others in freedom rights?
I would say voting Act came out of the involvement, and I was just so proud of it when we was allowed to register, and not only register, but we was allowed to vote. And that's when things began to change in Mississippi. Even now, we have the largest number of African American elected officials in the United States, and that's a plus.
Also, I think one of the more significant things is that the bringing down of those signs, the colored only, white only, when those signs came down, it gave us permission to mingle, to have white friends, or to, and I think that that made a huge difference. And the fact that we're able to be here tonight and just see this array of colors as the kids were talking about, I don't think that we would be doing that had we not gone through that struggle and brought down those signs.
I think the impact of the freedom riders and their resistance manifested itself in giving momentum to the civil rights movement. I think without freedom riders, you would not have Selma to Montgomery. I don't think you would have all of those major manifestations and demonstrations that followed that added momentum, as Akata said, to seeing that kind of significant kind of legislation.
There was one particular freedom rider, when he was interviewed, he had a lot of passion when he said that the freedom riders helped blacks to get rid of the myth of impotence, which is exactly myth, where blacks think they were powerless, or felt they were powerless, and acted as such. And you mentioned, Mr. Watkins, that voting rights were established, were granted at that time. What do you think about people who, us now, when we can vote, we can, at any election, we had young people out in the foyer earlier encouraging people to vote, to register. What do you think about people who say, I'm not going to vote, it doesn't make a difference, that's fake, whatever excuse they might give? What do you all think and feel about that kind of attitude and belief?
That's a good question. I really don't know how to answer that, other than to say they are not educated to the fact of what is happening around them. They are not educated to the fact of what is happening within their community. If they was privy of anything that was going on in their community, I don't think that they would be thinking that way. Because not only do you have to register, you have to get out here and vote. And by voting, you make a difference. Just look around. Some elected officials were introduced here tonight, and if we didn't get out and vote for them, then they wouldn't have been introduced as elected officials. You just have to get out and vote.
Let's just look a moment at Ferguson, Missouri. All of a sudden, people in that community are beginning to realize the importance of voting. When years prior to the incidents that are happening now, Black people in most of those counties comprise the majority population. And if they have been active and voting, the prosecuting attorney that they are now accusing of bias and they want to impeach was in the elective office, they could have voted him out years ago and put someone who they thought was more sensitive and responsible. The police chief, they could have voted him out years ago. If they had wanted more than 3 Black police officers on the police force, they could have elected a city council which views that as more of a priority. But it is not too late yet. Now they realize the power of voting.
You know,
Oh, go ahead.
someone asked me, you may be here, asked me the difference in the 1961 when we were fighting and going through those struggles, and now, Ferguson. And when I thought about it, that's a very important question, because a lot of our youth are somewhat lost now and don't have a direction, don't really know what to do. But my answer to that is that there's a big difference. Back in 1961, most people were on the side of Jim Crow laws. Officials, everybody, all whites. Well, I can't say that because freedom riders were 50% white, but most of the officials and everybody was on, a lot of people were on the side of Jim Crow laws. Today, that is turned around. Most people are on our side. Most people believe that we need to have equality. So my message to these young people who are going through some of the same struggles that we went through then, fighting some of the same battles that we fought at that time, is to not think about doing this using violence. You need to let us be your role models. We made a difference by way of peaceful means. And I say the number one alternative to violence is voting, because there are too many people who will support equality. Voting is most important, not violence.
And as you said, part of that is voting, promoting civil rights is voting. One of the students earlier today talked about education, the education of us all, how important that is as far as the civil rights movement. My question to you now, we have about 5 minutes left. What advice would you give to young adults and older adults to help keep alive the civil rights movement? Because racism is not dead. It is alive and well. We need to know what should be our next steps, or how will we prepare ourselves for what we call the continuation of the battle for civil rights.
Number one, it's going to be quite some time before we see another mega evidence. it's going to be quite some time before we see another Dr. Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. My advice would be to get involved, make a difference to the students here at this beautiful high school. Make a difference in your school. Make a difference in your community. Make a difference in your church. Do something to say, I did it. You don't have to become a Martin Luther King or a Malcolm X or a Medgar Evers. Be you. Do something that you are proud of, that you can look back and say, I did that. I started that. This is my idea. Do something that you can put your hands on.
One of the questions we are frequently asked is that when you got involved, did you know that you were getting involved in something so special? Did you know that you were getting involved in something that was going to have such a far-reaching impact? And the answer is no. We did not have a clue. The only thing we knew was that we were doing something that we had to do. And if there is anything to be learned from it in terms of a personal message, I would say to you as young people, would it demonstrate moments of something that we were capable of doing? And if we were capable of doing it then, why is it impossible for you to do it now? So those were the kind of yes we can moments. And yes you can. So step up.
Believe it or not, like it or not, these kids are our future, okay? We need these kids to step up to the plate. We need to be role models for them, but then they need to become role models, do positive things, become role models for younger ones or others who may be engaged in negative activities. We need kids who are positive to step up to the plate. We need them to become influential. We need them to become the leaders. You can do it because we did it. Do not allow anything to stop you from your dreams and from trying to do the things that you want to do in life. You need to stay positive and love one another and show the way.
Ending on a personal note, when I was introduced, they talked about living in Canada. And yes, when I turned 19, I decided for a number of reasons to leave the country. And I went to Canada in 1966, and I've lived there ever since. But we had the opportunity and the privilege. Our host took us to Lewiston, New York. And we were able to stand there at Freedom Crossing and visualize an experience of the Underground Railroad and the slaves being there and looking across the body of water and saying, here's Canada. We made it. The irony was not lost on me as I stood there thinking in reverse, being 19-year-old and going to Canada, sort of reversing the Underground Railroad experience. So it was a powerful experience for me. And so we thank you. Our host has just been tremendous.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
I just want, I really, I'm with the Bowie Foundation, and we came up with this program and connected with Miss Judy, Miss Renee, and Pastor Pastor Pridgeon and his family. I just want to say thank you, because we came here bringing a little-known history for your community, but we came into your community and received the same thing, because the history that we learned here was something that we didn't know. And so I thank all of you, and I thank them for inviting us to come and share in this wonderful, beautiful community. Thank you so much.
Just want to remind you.
Well, there you have it. We were in Niagara Falls, and three of the actual Freedom Riders were there. Just to give you a little insight about what Freedom Riders were all about, they rode through the South, the various cities of the South, on buses to actually have the signs removed that said for blacks only, for whites only, like at water fountains and in public bathrooms and restrooms and areas like that. Back then, you go to certain areas in the South and you'd have a sign that said black only, white only. The white only faucet was nice and clean, and had good clean water coming out of it, and the faucet for black people was nasty and dirty. The bathroom for white people was nice and clean, and the bathroom for black people was all nasty. So the Freedom Riders rode through the various cities of the South to end the segregation, to end the, it was sort of like a discrimination against black people, so that you could remove those signs. And finally the signs were removed. Just similar to the fact when they were boycotting, when the boycott had existed. I know you probably remember when, before Rosa Parks sat on the bus, historically speaking, what had happened was, when a black person would get on the bus back in the South, they would have to go, there's two doors on the bus, right? The front door is supposed to be to get on, and the back door is supposed to be to get off. Well, you get on the front door, the black person would go and put the money in. They'd have to actually get off the bus, walk to the back door, and then get on the bus that way. You could not get on the bus to the front door. A black person could not. So here you have 90% of the bus filled with black folks is crowded up in the back, and you got all these empty seats up in the front, but black folks were not allowed to sit. If they did, they would get arrested. So they were boycotting. Another, similar boycott had existed for that. And just like the Freedom Riders, they met with great opposition when they rode through the various cities of the South. They met with tear gas. White folks they didn't want them in the city. A lot of white folks, I don't know why they hate us so much, but they didn't want them in the city. They just said, we don't want you here. They would rock the bus until the bus would tilt over. They would throw tear gas in the bus, force the people out of the bus, so that now that we could beat you up or possibly kill you, because it wasn't illegal for a white person to kill a black person back then, no matter whether you was doing anything or not. Just the fact that you were black was enough to make you guilty, And so a lot of things have changed over the years, but a lot of people don't realize the struggle and the fight that the people had went through, actually, so that we could get to where we are today. But I can tell you, my brothers and sisters, that the struggle is not over. We're still fighting. I call it modern day discrimination now. You can't literally verbally say, we're not going to hire you black folks, but you just don't have to hire black folks, You can't say openly, you can't use this toilet, you got to use that toilet, whatever. You can't openly discriminate, but you can still not do it, because you don't want to, or whatever, or for whatever reason it is that you decide not to do it. And so, the Freedom Riders rode through the various cities of the South, knowing that any day that they could lose their life for what they were doing. That they met with great opposition, because, as they entered into the city, white folks were waiting there in a mob-like setting, with their weapons, tear gas, sticks, billy clubs. And then it got to the point where actually police had got involved, and they would have to actually sort of intermediate when the Freedom Riders rode into the various cities. They knew they were coming, they were expected. And so, but I believe it was because the police officers were basically protecting, so that in case a black person decided to retaliate against a white person, they couldn't do it. I don't believe it was necessarily to protect the black person from getting hurt or killed. It was to create peace, but it was basically to protect the society, not necessarily the people who were riding the buses. And I really applaud these freedom riders, you know, the people who actually fought back then, you know, to, you know, get rid of the discrimination, to get rid of the racism. You know, as we move forward in history, you know, Black Panthers, they fought against police brutality. They did a non-violent fight, but they stood in the streets with their weapons armed, their rifles up against their shoulders, you know, because they knew that they may have to use them, you know. And so the police, they met with great opposition again. You know, the police did not like it. You know, they had to, the police respected, though, the Black Panthers, because they knew at one point you couldn't, there's not but so much that you can do at this point, because, hey, we have rifles, you know, and we're prepared to use them. You know, we're fighting non-violently. We're telling you, you know, we're asking you, you know, to be fair about it, but, you know, you're coming at us, you know, in a way that you think now you want to, you know, you're going to shoot me because, you know, here I am trying to fight for something that's right. And so I have my rifle up against my shoulder, you know, so you ain't going to come but so far. And of course the police, they hate, you know, they definitely, you was going against the law then. So, you know, a lot of things happen, you know, and I'm telling you, it's not that very long ago. You know, that it was less than 50 years ago, basically, that a lot of these things happened. You know, we were discriminated against. When I say we, I mean we as African American people, a nation really. We've been discriminated against basically in a lot of areas. You know, dates way back into slavery, 400, 500 years ago, when society had captured, you know, African Americans and took them into slavery against their will, separated them from families, and forced them to work for no wages at all, you know, and make it a crime if you tried to escape. They made their own laws, you know, and when I came here to Western New York from New York City, I saw, it's like I stepped back in time, you know, but a lot of racism still goes on here, you know, and there's certain cities that are more highly racist than others. And they say Buffalo, New York is one of the highest racist cities in the state of New York. And I believe that, you know, you're not going to be able to legally put up a sign that says you can't use my bathroom, black folks. You know, but you can stop me, you know, you can not let me or whatever, you know, but things have come a long way, you know. I mean, we got a black president now, you know, his wife is black, he's got 2 beautiful black daughters, you know, that have African names. We have a lot of black people in political power. We have a black chief police commissioner, we have black school leaders, we have a lot of council leaders that are black and African American, you know, so we've come a long way in such a short period of time. And I believe it's all because it's due to people who dare to dream big, dare to take a chance. You know, the people who fought so that we could live today and have freedom today actually did it, and, you know, they were risking their lives. You know, because any day, I heard one story about, you know, when I was watching the documentary, that they were on their knees in front of this particular building, asking for, I forgot what the fight was at that point, but, you know, they had their eyes closed, they were on their knees, you know, and he said he actually heard the man next to him, his head getting cracked wide open with a billy club. You know, police officers used to be able to carry a billy club that was at least about maybe 3 or 4 foot long, and that was thick. It was really thick, and it was made out of heavy something. So if you take that sucker and you whack it up against some wood, you're gonna crack that wood. That was, a billy club was almost as effective as a hammer. Okay, and some hammers are not that strong, but a billy club is long. And now they use, you know, different weapons, you know, and I thought that when police are supposed to shoot you, they said it's supposed to shoot to injure, not to kill. But, you know, we're dealing with a lot of issues today. Black folks are still dying at the hands of police officers, you know, and it's still going on today. So, you know, these freedom riders did a great thing for us. But today we have to now take the front line. We have to train our children up in the way that they should go. We have to teach our children about black history so that they will know where they come from, and so they can take the fight a little further. You know, we don't want the fight to end here. We want the fight to continue. We want, you know, to continue to get what we're rightfully entitled to, get what we rightfully deserve. We're tired of being discriminated against. We're tired of, you know, why you can hate me all you want to, but don't try to deny me my equal rights, my ability to get a job, my ability to work, my ability to live where I want to live at. You know, this Buffalo is racist. I'm a real estate broker, and I see the racism in certain cities. You know, Lovejoy, for example, white folks are discriminatory. Tonawanda, white folks in the courthouses, They wanted to see us. We have the ability to fight in court now. So we fight our battle in the courtroom and in the boardroom and in the classroom and behind the pulpit. But they don't want to see us doing that. They want us still fighting, killing each other on the streets. They would rather not have us in the courtroom, and they still hate us to this day. But they can't openly and blatantly show it. And we have a right to sue. A lot of people decide, oh, well, I just let it go. No, you have a right to sue. You have a right to, equal rights. If you got to take it to court, you got to take it to court. And that's what I've done, and I'm prepared to take, sue some more people if I have to, to present my case before the judge. So it's a whole, and you got these slumlords out here that come and buy these buildings. You have these corrupt judges. You have a lot of people that are doing the wrong thing, but then you have a lot of us that are trying to do the right thing. And yes, we can still fight, but we don't have to fight openly like they do. We fight in the classroom and in the boardroom and in the courtroom and behind the pulpit. That's where our fight is now. And I believe that we have to continue to fight. We can't give up the fight because you say, oh, they fought for us now, so we're just going to sit back and chill out and enjoy it. No, we have to still continue to fight. These freedom riders, a lot of them are not alive today. You heard the man, he said he was facing death row at 13 years old. He wasn't even a teenager. He was just a teenager, barely a teenager. And the man was about to get the electric chair, okay, for trying to do what was right.